What comes to mind when I ask you what the biggest region in game development is? Is it Japan, with its Nintendo fanboys and absolute domination in the console market? Or the US, with the most AAA game studios, dev talent, and an army of gun-loving basement gamers? Or is it Europe, with the great company that we all know as Ubisoft? Obviously, the answer is just a Google search away, but there's a lot more to this once you think about it. I mean, you probably guessed that from the title, but where does China come in? Well, China is pretty strange. It's not exactly the undisputed gaming powerhouse today, but it's been slowly but surely expanding its presence in the video game industry, and before long, it actually could be. First of all, we got the massive, and I mean massive, companies like Tencent. Now I have no idea how such a big company can move so fast, but anytime a game studio seems to get some attention, either Tencent or its little brother NetEase pounce on it and start throwing money to get some sort of profit out of it. And the scary thing is, it actually works really well. These conglomerates have been raking in the big bucks and using that money to reinvest in other companies, creating a never-ending loop where money makes more money.
What are your superpowers again?
I'm rich.
In fact, I personally feel that these companies are starting to get out of hand. Tencent is the best example of this. Not only do they own 100% of Riot Games and 84.3% of Supercell, I bet most of you didn't know that they also have a 40% share of Epic Games, 30% of Larian Studios, the folks behind Baldur's Gate 3, 80% of Grinding Gear Games, the developers of Path of Exile, 16% of From Software, the studio behind Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and Sekiro, and the list goes on, expanding even into sectors that are remotely tied to games. It's actually borderline terrifying how successful a company like Tencent can be by just steamrolling everything with money. And on top of that, these companies have their own steady stream of income in the form of live service games. With games like PUBG Mobile and Marvel Rivals combined with these investments, these companies have, in financial terms, diversified their portfolio so much that it looks like it's impossible for them to fall. Unless, someone decides to personally destroy them. But it's not just a few companies that are seeing success anymore. We've always had studios churning out shitty live service games, but in recent years other Chinese dev teams have cracked the code for mobile success, do anime games better than Japan. And when I say better, it's not just about making hornier characters, it's about the breakneck speed at which games are developed and updated. Take Genshin Impact for example. Every 6 weeks, there's an update that usually includes some combination of new characters, additional main or side quests, time-limited content, new monsters, new cards, new furniture, new recipes. You get the idea. There's just no way an ordinary company can dish out such a ridiculous amount of content that fast. Unless... And it's really hard to find Western news outlets that cover the actual status quo of Chinese working conditions. But based on the fact that there's literally an extensive Wikipedia page about brutal Chinese work hours, and by just looking at the speed and volume of game releases and updates, it's not too difficult to connect the dots. And if they actually are able to produce mass amounts of content with such short time and worker-favorable labor policies, well then that just means they have the best workers in the whole world, and we're cooked. And maybe there's at least some truth to that argument. Bigger and arguably pickier names in the industry have been giving chances to Chinese companies with their own treasured IPs. Like, who would have expected a Persona mobile port to be developed by a Chinese company? Not only that, but with AAA games like Black Myth Wukong being nominated for Game of the Year, and new games like Showa American Story getting traction, the range of games that China makes seems to get broader and broader. And the scariest part? Wukong only cost $43 million and a team of 140 to produce. Now the phrase only 43 million is pretty crazy. But for comparison, AAA Sony games like Horizon Forbidden West, The Last of Us Part 2, and God of War Ragnarok all reportedly cost over 200 million and had bigger teams. Obviously, there's a huge wage gap between the US and China, but even The Witcher 3, which was developed by the Polish company CD Projekt, cost 81 million in 2015. If you consider inflation, that's over $100 million, which is more than double Wukong's budget. So why am I ranting about that low budget, and why is that the scary part? As much as I hate to bring money into the equation, if you look at games from a business perspective, it's literally a goldmine for investment. Let's say you're an investor who has, for convenience, about $250 million to invest in games. Right now, the right choice is probably to invest in a Western studio with proven talented people, but 10 or maybe even 5 years down the line, Chinese studios will also have developers with experience under their belt on big games that were once exclusive to Western studios. And if there's no critical difference in talent, would you want to invest in one game or 5 for the same cost? Now, of course, I did water it down a lot, and there are obviously complexities that dumb YouTubers no idea about. For starters, you obviously have to factor in how the Chinese government hates video games, and well, the fact that China is China. But still, I believe that China's a treasure trove, albeit cursed. And hey, times change faster than we expect. So if the curse is lifted, who knows what'll happen. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.